everyone, you're watching World News Program live from Algiers with me, Maryam Zian, to the headlines. New Gaza school massacre leaves at least 30 dead in Algeria renews its call for accountability of the Zionist entity regarding the crimes committed in the occupied Palestinian territories. Coming up next, Israeli strikes in southern Syria leave casualties amid renewed Israeli ground offensive on the outskirts of the Syrian capital. Next, Sudan's battle shifts west, and the army strikes in Al Fasher while rapid support forces threaten to expand the war northward. Global outcry against U.S. tariffs after Trump's economic shakeup and calls for immediate repeal and retaliation. Hello and welcome back to the details of our program. First, Algeria's Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, received a phone call on Thursday from his French counterpart, Jean-Noël Barrot, according to a statement from the ministry. Mr. Barrot is scheduled to make an official visit to Algeria on Sunday at the invitation of his Algerian counterpart, Mr. Ahmed Attaf. The two ministers will also reveal key issues that the two heads of state have requested be given special attention within the broader framework of resolving disputes that have recently disrupted the normal course of Algerian-French relations. The Palestinian file remains a pressing issue, with the situation in Gaza deteriorating. The Israeli occupation army carried out a new massacre in the Gaza Strip on Thursday evening, targeting a school sheltering displaced people in the Al Tufah neighborhood northeast of Gaza City with several highly destructive missiles. The office added that the attack resulted in the death of at least 29 people, including 18 children, women, and elderly individuals, in addition to over 100 injured, many in critical condition.
الإسرائيلي حتى هذه اللحظة يقوم بعمليات القصف في غزة.
Israeli forces continue airstrikes, with the bombing ongoing. This is a massacre in every sense, targeting multiple cities, including a school where dozens of martyrs, including children, women, and elderly people, have been killed. Entire families were inside when it was hit. It is now a shelter, but many citizens have died there. Medical teams are overwhelmed, and the medical system cannot cope with the high number of casualties, especially children. The situation is catastrophic, and it's crucial for the Arab, human, and international community to act to protect Gaza's citizens.
Palestinian media reported that at least 20 people were killed on Thursday in an Israeli strike on the residential area of the Al neighborhood of Gaza City. Among the victims were women and children, while dozens of others were wounded. At least 15 martyrs were taken to Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital in the city. And in another attack, local sources confirmed the killing of 3 Palestinians and the injury of others following an Israeli airstrike on a house in the Yarmouk area of central Gaza City. In Khan Yunis, southern Gaza, local sources reported the killing of 10 people and the injury of others in an Israeli strike on a house and tents sheltering displaced families north of the city. The Palestinian news agency also reported that 1 Palestinian was killed when the occupation bombed a house belonging to the Tabash family in the town of Al-Absan al-Kabira, east of Khan Yunis. And on Thursday, the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza announced that 100 Palestinians have been killed and 130 others wounded in the past 24 hours. In a statement, the ministry reported that since the resumption of aggression on the Gaza Strip, the death toll has risen to 1,163 martyrs and 2,735 injured. Additionally, the Ministry of Health confirmed that the overall death toll in Gaza has reached 50,523 martyrs since October 7, 2023. The UN Under-Secretary-General for Safety and Security, Gilles Michaud, announced that 11 UN staff members have been killed since the collapse of the ceasefire in Gaza. Michaud stated that 288 UN staff members have been killed by Israeli forces during the war on Gaza, including the 11 casualties since the ceasefire breakdown. Algeria renewed its call for the UN Security Council to assume its full responsibilities regarding the crimes committed by the Israeli occupation forces in Gaza. Algeria's permanent representative to the UN, Mr. Ammar Benjama, called during a Security Council session convened by Algeria and devoted to the situation in Palestine on the Council to assume its full responsibility and ensure the implementation of its resolution, warning that failure to adopt this approach would lead to the loss of any remaining authority.
Algeria requested this meeting because we firmly believe that this Council must speak with clarity and strength. This Council must fully embrace its responsibilities. This Council must ensure the implementation of its own decision. Failure to do so will result in the loss of any remaining authority, any remaining legitimacy. And the world, our constituency, will no longer respect neither the Council nor its deliberation.
Benjama warned that killing has become a daily routine in Gaza amid the silence of the international community, emphasized that the occupation is not satisfied with killing, but is exacerbating it with siege, blockade, and starvation.
Killing became the daily routine of Gazans, while the international community watches a genocide unfold live. And like all of us here, it remained passive. The search of bodies after this massacre has been heartbreaking. With children identified only by their clothes, as if the killing was not enough. For more than a month now, Israeli forces have literally blocked any humanitarian aid from entering Gaza.
The Algerian diplomat emphasized that the occupation is persistent in its crimes in the West Bank and committing atrocities through killing, displacement, land confiscation, in addition to repeated attacks on the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Let's have a listen.
While we focus on the suffering in Gaza, we must not overlook the atrocities occurring in the West Bank. There also, the Israeli war machine has spared no part of the West Bank from its brutality. The figures of destruction, dispossession, annexation, arrestation, forced displacement, and finally, assassinations continue to rise daily. Israeli officials have publicly laud their efforts. And they have made it clear that they will not allow the Palestinian Authority to effectively control the West Bank.
And Algeria affirmed that the credibility of the international community depends on its ability to implement the laws and principles it advocates. Algeria's representative to the United Nations in Geneva, Rachid Bladhan, emphasized during a session of the Human Rights Council to vote on a draft resolution calling for accountability and justice in the occupied Palestinian territories, that accountability is a prerequisite for achieving a just and sustainable solution. And also, Algeria's representative to the United Nations warned of the continued violations of the Zionist occupation against the Palestinian people, noting that the absence of accountability fuels a culture of impunity and deepens the suffering of Palestinian people.
Accountability is not an obstacle to peace, but rather a prerequisite for achieving a just and sustainable solution. True peace cannot be achieved without recognizing the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people, foremost among them the right to self-determination. We therefore call on all the member states to support this solution and reaffirm their commitment to the principles of justice, accountability, and the rule of law, in accordance with the decisions of the International Court of Justice. The credibility of the international community depends on its ability to implement the laws and principles it advocates.
Algeria has also confirmed that the credibility of the international community depends on its ability to implement the laws and principles it advocates. Algeria's permanent representative to the UN, Bladhan, affirmed during a session of the Human Rights Council where a resolution was being voted on calling for accountability and justice in the occupied Palestinian territories, said that accountability is a fundamental condition for achieving a fair and sustainable solution. He called on all the countries to support this resolution and reaffirm their commitment to the principles of justice, accountability, and the rule of law in accordance with the decisions of the International Court of Justice.
The Palestinian people continue to face serious violations of the international law, including unlawful killings, forced displacement, settlement expansion, demolition of homes and vital infrastructure, arbitrary arrests, and collective punishment. The continuation of these violations, in the absence of accountability, fuels a culture of impunity, deepens the suffering of the Palestinian people, and undermines prospects for a just and lasting peace.
And on Thursday, Israeli forces continued their 67-day assault on Tulkarem and the occupied West Bank, injuring several Palestinians and arresting others. According to the Palestinian news agency, troops conducted raids and home invasions, heavily deploying in the city's eastern and southern neighborhoods. The ongoing offensive has killed 13 Palestinians, including a child and 2 women, 1 pregnant, injured dozens, and displaced over 4,000 families, and destroyed hundreds of homes and infrastructure. Also on Thursday, Israeli forces launched a new wave of airstrikes on Syria, targeting the city of Kiswa near Damascus. Syrian media reported hearing a loud explosion in the capital with investigations ongoing to determine its nature. According to Sana, the Syrian Arab news agency, Israeli airstrikes targeted areas around Kiswa and the Damascus countryside. On Wednesday, Israeli warplanes had already bombed 2 air bases and military infrastructure sites in Damascus, Hamat, and Homs, as confirmed by Syrian army. And fighting has taken new directions in the war-torn Sudan after fresh clashes between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces. The army says it launched new hits on the RSF, while the latter claims or threatens with taking the war to northern regions of the country. Usama Ayadi has the report.
Just weeks after the Sudanese army reclaimed control of Khartoum from the Rapid Support Forces, Heavy fighting has erupted in North Darfur. The military says it launched a primitive strike against advancing RSF troops near Al-Fashir, destroying vehicles and inflicting casualties. Meanwhile, the RSF claims it shot down an army aircraft as clashes escalate on multiple fronts in the region. The UN is now sounding the alarm over alleged war crimes. Human Rights Chief Volker Turk says civilians in Khartoum were executed by army forces on suspicion of aiding the RSF. At the same time, activists report that the RSF attacks on villages south of Khartoum have killed at least 85 people in the past week alone.
The UN Human Rights Office has reviewed multiple horrific videos posted on social media showing armed men executing civilians in cold blood and documented a disturbing rise in online hate speech and incitement to violence.
The conflict shows no sign of slowing. The RSF's deputy commander has declared a new war in northern Sudan, vowing to expand fighting beyond Darfur and Khartoum. His threats raise fears of a prolonged and even bloodier phase of Sudan's devastating civil war.
We will move to the north, even if they take 1 million soldiers. Let them take them. Are there men capable of this stage? Tonight, we send out 2,000 vehicles, and we will head to the north. We were wrong and did not know where the interests of the battle lay, but today we know our interests.
With both sides digging in and international concerns growing over atrocities, Sudan's future looks increasingly grim as the war enters its second year. Civilians remain trapped on the crossfire with no peace in sight. The international community continues to call for restraint and dialogue, but with neither side backing down, Sudan's humanitarian catastrophe deepens by the day. Millions remain displaced, famine looms, and the path to peace appears more distant than ever. For now, the people of Sudan are left waiting and suffering as the war rages on.
The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on Thursday described US President Donald Trump tariffs as a major blow to the world economy, adding that the European Union was prepared to respond with countermeasures if talks with Washington failed. Von der Leyen said she deeply regretted the US move and warned of immense consequences for the global economy, including vulnerable countries facing some of the highest US tariffs. She also affirmed that Europe is already finalizing the first package of countermeasures in response to the tariffs on steel, explaining the readiness of Europe to respond.
We have always been ready to negotiate with the United States to remove the remaining barriers to transatlantic trade. At the same time, we are prepared to respond. We are already finalizing the first package of countermeasures in response to tariffs on steel. And we're now preparing for further countermeasures to protect our interests and our businesses if negotiations fail.
And Reuters reported citing a senior European Union official that EU member states are set to vote on Wednesday, April 9, on the countermeasures against US tariffs on steel and aluminum. The same source indicated that the European Commission's proposal is expected to be approved unless opposed by a qualified majority of 15 member states. Also, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz criticized the new broad-ranging US tariffs, calling them fundamentally wrong. Speaking at a press conference on Thursday, Scholz reaffirmed that Europe remains open to further talks to prevent a worsening trade war. He described Trump's move as an attack on a global trade system that has fostered prosperity worldwide.
Die jüngsten Zollentscheidungen des US-Präsidenten halte ich für grundfalsch.
I believe the recent US presidential decisions on tariffs are fundamentally wrong. They attack a global trade system that has fostered prosperity, largely due to American efforts. These decisions will harm the global economy, impacting companies and consumers worldwide, including in the US. The US government is heading toward losses. The European Union, with 450 million consumers, holds significant power. We prioritize cooperation over confrontation and will defend our interests. Europe will respond strongly and united, pushing the US to reconsider its approach.
And in the same context, China has demanded that the US immediately revoke its latest tariffs, warning of retaliatory measures to protect its interests. In the statement, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce said that Washington's decision ignores the balanced trade interests achieved through years of multilateral negotiations and overlooks the substantial benefits the US has gained from global trade. The ministry stressed that China strongly opposes these tariffs and will take countermeasures to defend its rights and interests.
China has always believed that the US Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962 measures are unilateral and protectionist actions implemented in the name of national security. China, together with many other countries, firmly opposes this measure and urges the US to cancel the 232 steel and aluminum measures as soon as possible.
And in a move that continues to echo across global markets, US President Donald Trump, tariffs have sparked intense debates reshaping trade dynamics, influencing economies worldwide. And from heightened costs for consumers to shifting alliances between nations, the long-lasting impact of these policies is still unfolding. Nabil Khazini has the story.
Around 13,000 kilometers far away from the White House, this small garment factory in Dhaka, in Bangladesh, is already feeling the shock of the newly imposed tariffs by the US president. The United States stands as the largest market for the Bangladeshi flourishing ready-made garment industry, with exports reaching nearly $10 billion. But Bangladesh is one of the 60 countries which will be hit with higher rates of up to 50%. For smaller businesses like this one, the added financial pressure is significant, threatening to disrupt their growth and creates uncertainty for their future.
It's bad news for us if double taxation is imposed. As a Bangladeshi clothes maker and exporter, this is a shocking news for us. If you look at the socio-economic situation in Bangladesh, you'll see that less privileged females are mostly making a living from this industry. They will face the brunt if American buyers leave Bangladesh due to this tariff imposed.
The story began with this man, Donald Trump. For him, tariffs are central to his economic strategy. He sees them as a way to encourage Americans to buy domestic goods, boosting the economy and tax revenue. He also aims to reduce the trade deficit by narrowing the gap between imports and exports. But will this strategy truly yield to results he envisions?
There might be some industries that would benefit from these tariffs in the US. However, it is well known that tariffs are not the best tool of industrial policy. It will immediately lead to an increase in consumer prices in the US. It could lead to overall slowdown of American economy. Moreover, many of those tariffs, they are imposed on parts and components, on inputs, which are used in production of American goods.
As the world tries to make sense of Trump's tariff tsunami, economic theory only gets us so far. Ultimately, it seems to be fueled by something beyond mere economics.
And Russian chief negotiator Kirill Dmitriev announced that he will meet with US officials in Washington on Thursday amid signs of warming relations between Russia and the US. In a Telegram post, Dmitriev stated that he would meet representatives of President Donald Trump's administration. This visit marks the first trip by a senior Russian official to the US since the start of Russia's special military operation in Ukraine in 2022. Dmitriev's visit follows Trump's recent remarks expressing frustration with the slow pace of ceasefire negotiations in Ukraine. The Paris prosecutor's office has launched an investigation following threats and statements targeting judges who ruled against far-right leader Marine Le Pen, according to French media reports. Paris's chief prosecutor confirmed that a probe is underway into inappropriate remarks directed at the judges who delivered a collective ruling in the National Rally's fake jobs case at the European Parliament. The prosecutor emphasized that legal appeals remain the proper way to challenge any judicial decision. The case has been handed over to the National Unit for Combating Online Hate.
In any democratic society, judicial discussion must adhere to criminal procedures. Appeal is the legal avenue for challenging any judicial decision. Freedom of expression, including online, has limits, particularly in not putting individuals at risk.
Ladies and gentlemen, our program has come to an end. Thank you for watching. Have a great night.